them and how to automate the process. I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Tricia. I'm the Senior Technical Writer here at ShipWorks, so I basically write articles telling people what to do, so it makes me perfect for showing you how to complete these processes. Why are we talking about return labels today? Really, the process is pretty straightforward, but there are a lot of tips and tricks of how to automate the process that people aren't quite familiar with. So we're going to show you how to do that, basically just to save time processing shipments using actions or automated functions in some carriers like UPS, FedEx, Indicia, and Express One for Indicia. They have one-click functionality within them. So you can create a return label just by clicking a checkbox. We also have provide functions that you can email a return label to a customer or save the file automatically as a PDF so that you can come back to it later, or that you could attach that PDF to an email as well. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and maximize my screen here. So you should all be able to see my ShipWorks and my ShipWorks database that's on the screen. I'm just going to note one thing, that I'm using a pretty basic database. There's not many automated rules or processes or defaults set up, so it might be very similar to a new user who has just downloaded ShipWorks. So even though my database is basic, it's not going to look the same as a user or anybody else's. The overall processes that we're going to show today will be the same though. So one thing that I want to note, and that's very, very important to note when creating return labels, the first step in processing return labels is to determine which label format you're going to be printing to. And for return labels, it's important that you print to a standard format. This label format, the standard label format, is for inkjet printers or laser printers. Thermal printers use heat to print labels, so it's not that you can't print a return label to a thermal printer. It's just that 95% out of the cases, people want to email a return label to a customer or send it electronically to a customer, and the chances are that the customer is not really going to be using a thermal label printer. So in those 95% of the cases, it's really important to use your standard thermal label format setting. If you're just printing off, if you have a thermal printer and you want to print off a return label, you're more than welcome to do that. You can print return labels with a thermal printer format. You just have to understand who's going to be doing the printing and what printer they're actually going to be using to print that. So those are the two printers and the print formats that we'll be using. In this demonstration, we're going to assume that we're going to be printing to a standard inkjet or laser printer. So to check these formats, you would go to Manage, Shipping Settings, and then once this loads, we'll select our provider, and then right here it'll say Labels. The label will be printed with a thermal printer, and we'll uncheck these boxes. Make sure that all of the boxes are unchecked for each carrier that you're using when you're printing return labels if you're using a standard label format. Let's see. Basically what this allows us to do is it allows us to print your standard format label to a PDF or attach it to an email, and the customer can print it on their end, like I said. We need all of these to be blank, and I'll show you why. This tells ShipWorks what type of label to download when it processes your shipment. When ShipWorks processes your shipment, it sends a request to your mail server, whether it's UPS mail server, label server, or USPS label server, whoever you're requesting that label to come from. It's sending a request and it's saying, hey, download the label type in this format. Then once it's actually downloaded into this format, right now this is deselected, so it's downloading it as a standard. ShipWorks takes that format and then it routes it to the printer that it's going to be printed with. So we need to also, instead of just unchecking the box and assuming that everything's going to work, we're going to go ahead and go to our printing tab here, and we're going to examine the rules just to make sure that it's going to route to the correct printer when we print those return labels. So these are pretty much the standard print rules that we have in ShipWorks. Yours might look a little bit different if you've customized the print rules, but we recommend that most people use this setup. That if the shipment is in your thermal, basically if that box is checked saying, download this in a thermal label format, and we can look at this label format equals thermal, then it's going to print with your thermal template. Otherwise, if it's downloaded with that standard, it's going to route to that standard template. And those templates that it's routing to, we go to Manage Templates right here, and then we can look at the standard label template or the thermal label template, and we can adjust those settings as necessary. So we can specify, if we go to Standard, Edit, Settings, we can specify under Printing what printer we want that standard label format return label to print to. We can also, and then we can save it and close it, and we can do the same thing by going to Manage Templates, Labels, Thermal, Edit, Settings, and do the same thing with our thermal label printer. So we would specify our thermal label printer and then save that and then close. You've probably been familiar with these steps if you have a printer up and running with ShipWorks, but it's always good to review those processes. Once those processes are complete, then we can really focus on creating a return label. So now, for any of you guys who haven't printed a return label with ShipWorks, which I'm assuming is many of you since this is what the webinar is about, there are two main methods of creating a return label. One I mentioned before uses the one-click functionality where you check a box and it treats the shipment as a return shipment automatically without having to manually edit the shipment. Or there's also some providers where that option isn't available and you actually do have to manually switch the to and from fields. I will demonstrate both of these processes, and they're provider specific, so it really depends on who you're using, which process you will be performing. So the one-click functionality, and I will go ahead and go to the ship order screen by I right-click. You can also, and go to ship orders. You can also go to Home, Ship Orders, if that's what your preferred method of getting to the ship order screen. So I go, I right-click, but so if we go to select a shipment and we look at, our to and from fields, we've selected Indicia here. And Indicia is one of the providers, Indicia, Express One with Indicia, UPS, and FedEx, where you can actually, if you haven't already processed shipment, let's see, we'll just go ahead and process this one. We'll pretend like this has been already, oops. We will actually, just one moment. Just need to reactivate my license, and if this happens to anybody where they need a license reactivation, which happens if you move your store to a different server or something like that, you can always give us a call. We will go ahead and do that over the phone for you. It's just a simple process that if you provide us with your license information, even in an email, we can do that for you. So if you ever see that message, just do a simple reset. The license should be reset now. Go ahead, ship orders, and then you'll get this message right here saying that it's not activated, so we have to go and activate our license. And we'll do that by going Manage, Stores, selecting our store, License, and then Activate License. And then it's active now. So we'll go to ship orders again, and this should process now. And it's been processed. So whenever the first step in creating return labels is we're assuming that you've already have a processed shipment. We're assuming that you've shipped out a product and that it's somewhere to your customer or, a friend or whoever, and they need to get it back to you. So it's a shipment that's already processed somehow in ShipWorks. So the first step is to make sure that you have a processed shipment, and you can see this green checkbox right here that shows the shipment's been processed fine. Now, Indicia, like I said, has this one-click functionality where you can copy as a return. You just click copy. It will fill in automatically all of your shipment information that was previously entered, and check this little box for you that indicates that it's a return shipment. So there's nothing else that needs to be done in order to create this label. You just need to process, and your label's already generated. And this box right here and this copy as return function we'll talk a lot about later and the things that we can automate with that process. We can go ahead and preview that label by right-clicking again, going to Preview, going to Standard, and it's loading. And since we downloaded this label as a standard label, we can see it here. If you download a label as a thermal, nothing's going to show up because it's assuming that it's going to be printed with heat. So the fact that it shows up, it's basically telling your printer that it's okay to print this with an inkjet printer. We'll see the first label as your label that was processed with that order that went to your customer. And then we'll see the ship to address is company ABC. We'll see the company ABC here as the return address going to your office or wherever your warehouses are, wherever you tell it that you want it shipped to. And you can see that it says no postage stamp necessary, postage has already been prepaid. So it's an already prepaid label that you're generating with this process. The one-click functionality, like I said, is Indicia, Express One with Indicia, USPS, or UPS and FedEx. Now, it's important to realize which provider you're actually using because if you're using Express One with Stamps.com, the process is different than if you're using Express One with your Indicia account. If we go to another order, I'll show you the other method of creating a return label. So this is a USPS with Stamps.com account. It's going to be, this method is basically manually swapping the to and from fields. It's for Stamps.com, Express for Stamps.com, Express One for Stamps.com, OnTrack, iParcel, basically any other provider that we have in ShipWorks that isn't Indicia, Express One with Indicia, UPS, and FedEx. This is basically the default method of creating a return label. So, like I said before, we're assuming that the label has already been generated, and this one, we have two addresses to the same address, so I will go ahead and I'll just type in here. 123 Fake Street is one that I use quite often. So we have one from 1 Memorial Drive, and it's going to 123 Fake Street for the original order. We'll process this. And now we're going to assume that we need a return label from this, from this 123 Fake Street going to 1 Memorial Drive. If you go to copy, like we did with Indicia, you'll see that the copy as return functionality is not available because there is no box down here to check. There's nothing that we can do to indicate that this is a return shipment other than we can copy, which is going to copy the shipment details down here so you don't have to manually re-enter what was in that shipment, but you will have to go ahead and specify the addresses right here. So to get to the easiest way to do it would be to click the origin address, choose other address, and then go ahead and copy this information. So we'll go ahead and copy, John Doe, company ABC, 123 Fake Street, and then we'll, you would modify this as necessary. Then we would put going to whatever your warehouse is. In this case, we'll just say ShipWorks, and then ShipWorks 1 Memorial Drive. Now the rest of the shipment information should be correct, everything should be correct, and then we can process accordingly. Once this is processed, we can go ahead and again preview that label by right-clicking, selecting the label, or selecting preview, selecting a label template, and then we can see that ShipWorks sent this out to John Doe, and then John Doe is going to send this out back to ShipWorks. So it's two methods of performing the same function. It's pretty straightforward, and one thing that is especially important, a lot of people ask if you can create a shipment, let's say you as a vendor need to ship something that you aren't downloading from your online cart, that it's not something, that you need to send a return label, make a return label for, products, excess inventory, that kind of thing. How would you do that in ShipWorks? Can you do it in ShipWorks? And the answer is yes, you can. You would create a manual order by going to Home, New, and then you can, assign a customer, change the customer by, searching your customer, assigning it to one. We'll go ahead and assign it here. Create a customer, and then go ahead and use order numbers. Basically, processes the manual order, add your inventory, whatever you're shipping, and that's going to put it in the ShipWorks system, and then you just follow the same two processes that we just demonstrated to create that return label for something that might not be available on your online cart. Now, if we're going to go ahead and we've created these labels, we can take it one step further and say we want to email a label to a customer, or we want to create a PDF. Instead of having to print it out and having to scan it and then having to save that scan and then attach it to an email, we can do it directly from ShipWorks itself. So using this example of, well, let's use the first example of the indicia. We can go ahead and right-click, and then we can go ahead and go to Compose Email and choose our standard label. That's the one that we downloaded in the standard label format. And then it'll go ahead and pop up this window for you of where you can compose your email using the email accounts that you have configured in ShipWorks. You can change the subject, you can modify it, you can, like if I were to send it to myself, we can copy it, we can do whatever, change the subject, add a little note, it's going to automatically show you two labels because it's going to email, by default, it's going to try and prompt the email to email all labels associated with that order. Well, you can go ahead and select it, the first label, which is the label that was shipped with the original order, and delete that label. So that way they just receive the return label. So it's going to be formatted to where this will print out on the page just fine without the other label. So deleting the label won't affect the format of the second label, which is the return label that we want to send. If we were to, here is a return label you requested, and then modify this as necessary. You can change the font, do whatever you want to it, and then just go ahead and send it. That'll go ahead and send that to your customer, and then you're done. Again, to get to that process, you would right-click, go to Compose Email, and then select your standard label format. Now, the difference you might see and ask, what's the difference between email now versus Compose Email? Well, the Compose Email gives you a little bit more functionality and control. It allows you to specify the to field and allow, extra people to receive this label. You can, blind carbon copy yourself to it. Email now is going to just simply email the label without you being able to add a message, without you being able to preview it. It's just going to send it to the ship to address that is on that order. So if you don't need to send a message, if you don't need to verify that address, you can go ahead and absolutely choose email now. But if you want to just double check, if you want to delete, that first label and avoid any sort of ambiguity, Compose Email would probably be the better choice. Now, label as a PDF option. Again, this is a little bit more complicated because it requires you to download a PDF writer. You'll have to be downloading the label in the standard format. And the PDF writer is basically a program that allows you to create PDFs, but it prints those PDFs as it installs a PDF program that runs as a printer on your computer. Some common PDF writers are like Primo PDF, Qt PDF, Doro PDF. You can find free PDF writers by just Googling them and then choosing what you think would work best for your needs. You'll download that PDF program, install it on your computer, and then your computer should automatically recognize it as a printer, which when you go into your templates, manage templates, label template, you can go ahead and edit this, settings, and then once you have a PDF writer, I have Adobe PDF right here, you can go ahead and select your PDF writer as your printer, and that will route your labels to be printed with your, as a PDF file. When I say printed as a PDF file, it basically converts that label into a PDF for you. So once your PDF writer is installed and you have this saved, we can go, print, standard, and I'm actually running on a virtual machine right now. So this we won't be able to see the final product. It will see the printer Adobe PDF is automatically selected. What happens is it's going to try and actually prompt the PDF to appear on my normal PDF. Okay, so here we go. So we'll save this. Hope everyone can see that. Standard. Yeah, this is going to save it to my hard drive on the computer that you can see. So you can save it as PDF here. Go to your directory and open it up as a PDF. And then you can attach it or save it or do whatever you want with the PDF format. So it's one easy way of telling ShipWorks to automatically convert a file to a PDF instead of having to save it as a file, as a Word document file, or save it as a text file and having to do that conversion manually. Now we can go even further with these processes, where we will basically automate emailing or saving with a PDF. But the important thing to notice is that, remember when I said, if we go to Manage, or when we go to Ship Orders, down here, I was going to talk a little bit more about this box. Well, now's the time where I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this. This is extremely important in understanding how return shipments are classified in ShipWorks. When we did the to and from fields before switching them with stamps.com, there's no way for ShipWorks to flag internally that this is a return shipment. ShipWorks just sees this as another shipment being processed. There's no, bells and whistles telling ShipWorks, hey, pay attention to this shipment. It's basically just saying, this is one other thing that's been processed, and we'll filter it accordingly. When we look at this one-click functionality here, when we go to the ship orders, and we see this return shipment checkbox, that flags ShipWorks internally to say a return shipment has been processed. What do you want to do with it? And we can account for that in different ways. We can create a filter over here under orders. I'm just going to put it under the orders heading. If we go to filters, add new filter, and then return shipment. We can go ahead and create that filter where, for any shipment, label format equals standard, sure, or with return. So for any shipment in the order, this is going to pull any shipment that is a return shipment. It equals yes. We'll click next. We'll just use the default columns of ShipWorks. And it shows two. One of them is a previous order that was generated, but one is the one that we did today. So what happens here is this return, that its return equals yes, is basically monitoring this little checkbox. So if you create a return shipment filter, it's important to note that anything that's processed with stamps.com or Express One for stamps won't show in this filter because there's no way for ShipWorks to know that that's been processed as a return shipment. Similarly, if we go to Manage Actions and we're going to create a new action, we will go to, let's create a scheduled time, or well, no, let's create, as soon as the shipment is processed, we'll do that. See, only for normal or return shipments. This return shipments does the same thing as the filters conditions do. It's looking for that box to be checked. And so this is going to only be running on the orders that, have that checkbox marked, and the orders that involve that one-click functionality. So we can go ahead and email. If we want to get really clever, we can cancel out of here, go to close, templates. We can copy this template. We can edit and rename it returns template. We can edit it, go to Settings tab, email, here are the return labels you've requested, where we're basically specifying exactly who's going to be getting this. So we're changing the email settings for a specific returns template. We don't have to use the default settings of your standard label template anymore, since we just copied a template, and we can choose, if we want our store default, which we'll just go ahead and use, and we're going to go ahead and save that. So to do that, we just click standard, copy, OK, and then it creates a new one that we can go ahead and click edit and edit those email settings. Now, since we have a completely customized with settings returns template, we can use that for our actions instead of just a regular old standard template. Again, you can look, we can view it here to make sure it's functional. Preview, returns template. It's exactly the same thing as your standard template, just with different settings. Go to email, and then we can go ahead and email using the shipment with the returns template. This is going to have all of that, all of your cute subject line, and it specifies exactly who's going to get it. And if you want to, carbon copy yourself on just the returns labels and not necessarily, the thousands of shipments that you're processing, that's a good option to do. You can also, so you can go ahead and click OK. Let's review this one more time by going to Edit. So basically this action is saying when a shipment is processed, it's including all of your providers, but you can restrict it to one provider. But this is saying when a shipment is processed using any provider, only for return shipments. Again, it's looking for that one-click functionality. Email using the shipment, all your shipment data with your shipment labels. And then email using your returns template. You can choose to delay delivery, so you can delay it if you want all of your return labels to process at the end of your day in case somebody changes their mind. You can certainly delay delivery, send on the ship date at 8 p.m. and then click OK. And then that'll automatically go ahead and email your customer at the end of the day at 8 p.m. your return labels. Let's see. We can do a similar process. We can go ahead and save, at a scheduled time. If we want to save, I don't know, daily at, let's go ahead and do 8 p.m. again. If we want to schedule a time for our return labels to be saved, we can certainly do that. So scheduled time daily at 8 p.m. We'll run it every day. We can go ahead and save this file using everything in, let's say, our return shipment filter. And then we can modify that to only return shipments for today. I won't go through that process right now because that gets into more how to modify filters. But we certainly, if you have questions on how to modify filters, I would be happy to answer them kind of offline from this demonstration. But then we can go ahead and select that same returns template. And then we can click OK. So it'll save the returns template, and you should be all set to save that file. We can also make sure that we print that those files appear in this PDF by going to Returns Template, Edit, Settings, Printing, and then making sure that our printer is selected for PDF. That when we go to open those files and then print those, and then open those files, it'll go ahead and open those as a PDF. So those are the basic processes on how to create return labels using two different methods of doing it based on your provider, and it gives you a little bit of functionality on how to automate those processes a little bit further. So now I just wanted to open up the discussion for any sort of question and answers. If you have any questions, go ahead and type that into your questions box, and I'd be happy to answer those. So I will go ahead and wait right now. I'm not seeing any questions come through, but if you have any questions, please feel free to contact support@shipworks.com. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much for attending, and we look forward to helping you in the future. Thanks.